Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to the sheep pen, bah, where no goats are allowed. So, today we're going to talk about the demonic plot to destroy our way of life. And this is episode number 9. We're going to talk about the educational system and the corruption in our education system and the role that it's played in the demonic plot, its portion of this master plan. Before we get going, though, I would like to thank all of those of you who support this channel and who stepped up to help me make up for some losses that I had and to kind of recuperate my finances a little bit and get my bills caught up. Thank you so much. You did step up and help me, and I thank all of you who contributed, both large and small contributors. Thank you for digging deep and helping support this channel and keeping me preaching instead of digging ditches. And I ask for your continued support to keep the channel solvent and keep us moving forward. And I also want to give you a quick update on the family that we helped through the holiday season. Um, I kind of want to take a victory lap because I've done so much ministry and help for this family, and it's really amazing when God's plan comes together. That I made a recent visit to the house where the baby has put on weight. The bills are being paid. The house is now clean, and a lot of the nefarious characters who were complicating issues have kind of been shooed away from the premises, and we have a new focus on being self-sufficient for these folks. So I hope that they'll never get into this situation again. And the ministry portion of the things that we did empowered the head of the household to really step up and take some initiative and hold some people accountable and make the rest of the house pull their weight so they weren't having to carry all the weight on their own. And that came through some ministry and encouragement and work that I did with them, and also to help them deal with their personal demons so they could be a better leader. And it's just was a successful bout of ministry. I put a lot of time, effort, and money that you contributed towards this cause, and it's a miracle. You know, it's just a miracle what God can do. And I wish I could talk to you more in detail, but it's a win, win, win. It's a triumph to walk through that house and see that everything is working the way it's supposed to. Everything is functioning and all the people are functioning well. And it's just been, I wish I could go into more detail, but God did some amazing things in the lives of this family and all of the family members. And they're becoming the best versions of themselves. And you can thank God and the contributors of the channel and the work that we did here and all of your prayers and moral support that guided us through this. And it's just what a triumph. So thank you, Lord. All right, let's get to the message today. So when you're talking about education, I guess all of us will flash back to our own childhood in school. And I don't know, when I was a kid, there was this impression of school teachers. They were typically from the hometown they taught in. They were typically part of the community. Oftentimes, their own children attended the school, and they had an investment. They were vested in the process of educating their community. But community education has been transformed through our university system. You know, my sister was a school teacher, the one that passed away. And, you know, her education at the very beginning, when she went away to college, was seen as a challenge for our family because she went to college and came back politically indoctrinated. She had an attitude. She thought she knew everything. All the rest of us were stupid rubes. And really, she didn't get an extra dose of common sense. They just taught her some book learning. But she came back with this ideology that she was superior to everyone. And it was always a stress point on our relationships in the family. And the fact of the matter is, a sheepskin, a degree from a university or college, does not make you, omniscient. It doesn't mean you know everything like God. It doesn't make you God, right? But it does make you politically indoctrinated. If this was happening in the late 70s and early 80s in our country, then you can only imagine, flash forward to present day, what levels of indoctrination that teachers undergo, or anyone who goes and accepts a university education. That there was a plan and a plot starting clear back at the end of World War II. They started implementing this. Of course, it's older than that. Once again, I call this the 100-year plan. But the first step was to remove God from the schools and the universities. And the best way to do that was to create an anti God atmosphere in higher learning, to turn out more atheists than seminary candidates. Okay? To turn out more people who questioned God and questioned um, the nature of spirituality in favor of science and humanism. And what is humanism? Humanism is simply the belief that there's nothing higher than a human, that the humans are not just the highest on this planet, but there's nothing else but us. They do not believe in anything spiritual. They don't really believe in community, even. What they believe in is the concept that it's almost like Satanism, that you are the ultimate, what's the word I'm looking for? You have autonomy, right? Uh, the rules don't apply to you. There is no greater good or community or duty. They were really big on destroying the concept of honor and duty and country and God and family, and replacing it with science and groupthink and mob rule. And this started in the 40s and 50s, and the first hint of this in our culture is through art. You start to see definitely an anti-God, anti-family movement within artists first. This goes back to the beatniks, the early hippies, the pre-hippie hippies. And before then you had, painters like Norman Rockwell. You had, I don't know a lot about art, but you had painters that painted realistic art, real pictures of people. Even impressionists, they were still landscapes, scenes from daily life. And then the art starts to change to the point where you start to have controversies in the 80s and 90s, because people are making art with human blood and semen, and they're doing things like defacing Bibles and crucifixes and holy things. And there starts to become a real anti God movement within the artist community. Then this starts to spread to music as well. And we kind of know the early roots of Satanism in rock and roll. I told you in my True Crossroads story how they told me if I wanted to be a rock star, that they were giving me the opportunity. They, being the people in charge of everything, were giving me this grand opportunity, but I would have to denounce my Christianity and walk away from my faith. And so part of the 100-year plan was to get into the intellectual circles of the world and start chiseling away and replacing God with science. And now, ironically, they've even turned their back on science. And, some of the gender studies, transhumanism, transgenderism, a lot of this stuff is actually not in coordination with or according to science, but in opposition to science. And I won't get into how many genders they are, but you understand what I'm saying. It was a slippery slope, but more intentionally, it was a planned out, intentional sabotage for the purpose of destabilizing the family, bringing disunity to the community, and polarizing our nation to cause conflict, upheaval, and destruction. Now, the people that were being indoctrinated weren't told this. They were sold a bill of goods. They were told, this is a better way. We know more than you. Listen to us. And they were deceived through intellectual means to bring about a destructive move against the church, against the nuclear family, against community and individuality, really. And the way that they have come full circle to where they used to be the ones that were preaching about personal freedom, now they're the mob think, group rule, science based academia that is actually now being the Nazis. They're being, I hate to use that word, but they're being the oppressors. They're being the authoritarians now. The rebels used to be the left, and now they're the status quo, and they're the one enforcing their will upon the people. And it's just such a flip. And, there's a saying, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. And it makes sense that you need to infiltrate all of these institutions in the United States, and academia being one of the most important parts of that. And the Illuminati, the conspiracy as we know it, as elements that trace back to the very beginning. They saw from the very beginning through groups like Skull and Bones at Yale. I believe it's Yale University, where Skull and Bones is an Illuminati secret society. And they learned right away that if they could hijack higher learning, if they could infiltrate the education system, which, keep in mind, until this point, the education system had been dominated by the church, by Christendom. Christian universities were once the norm. And but the Illuminati could see that this is what they needed to do to get control of the youth, get control of the teachers. To get control of the teachers, you have to get control of the staff and the faculty. You have to infiltrate universities and put your secular, humanist, anti-government, anti-church, anti-country, anti-patriotism, anti-God people into key positions of power to start to control things. I believe it was Veritas that recently did an expose where they uncovered curriculum salesmen who got caught on hidden camera. And one of them was quoted as saying what they were doing was confessing, or actually even bragging, that they were selling illegal critical race theory textbooks to places where CRT has been eliminated from the schools, and you're not allowed to teach it in schools. And the school board and the parents and the people in charge have said no, but yet still there are rebel teachers who are going to teach this in spite of the ban. And there are unscrupulous curriculum salesmen out there who are proud to call themselves evil salesmen and sell this because this one particular salesman said he's an evil salesman. He sells this stuff illegally, but he don't care because he still gets paid. So I think the takeover of our universities has been complete for some time. It has trickled down into control of our public schools. And later on, we'll talk about political corruption and how that's played a role. But through political corruption, some places you don't even have the right as a Christian organization to choose your own curriculum, to operate within those states that are like this, or within those municipalities. You have to accept a certain level of public education curriculum or meet their requirements, which often include the necessity to teach humanism, secularism, and science, and limit you on being able to teach faith and Christian values and biblical principles. And so even the oldest form of education, which is religious education. I mean, originally, most of your universities were Christian based organizations where clergy oversaw the education of the children. Oxford University, of course, the big one in Texas is Southern Methodist University, Dallas Baptist University. A lot of these were originally Christian based universities, but slowly have been secularized, and some of that's been through requirements of state or even collegiate accreditation. That if you don't meet their accreditation requirements, your diploma won't be recognized, and so people have been infiltrated in these organizations. The organizations themselves have been infiltrated. And they've been watered down and diluted and honestly poisoned to a degree to where you can't tell the difference between a university like Yale and a university like SMU, or Dallas Baptist University, or any of the other Christian Baylor, for instance, any of these Christian-based universities, you can't tell the difference between them and any other secular university now. And that is not by accident. You know, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. If you can control what you teach people, then you can control society. It potentially the most important part of this 100-year plan is to infiltrate schools. And now in America, once upon a time, the parent was seen as the ultimate educator. The parent was seen as having a say. And now we have school board meetings where parents come to protest the things they're teaching their children, to have some say in what type of teaching is being utilized in these public schools funded by the public. And these people who come to school board meetings are being silenced. They're being, in some cases, arrested and dragged out, evicted from the building, not allowed to even speak their mind in opposition to the government controlled, or in my opinion, Illuminati controlled education system, which definitely has an agenda. A lot of people like me on YouTube are getting hung up on the drag time story hour type of issue that's out there, where you've got people dressed up in costumes who are representing the opposite gender they were born with, and in my opinion, confusing kids and causing all this. People are focused on that, and it's really a matter of you being focused on the result of the problem instead of looking at the actual problem, because it's educators that are pushing this kind of agenda. This is happening in schools and libraries, in places dominated by the academic, higher learning oriented people, that the corruption in colleges is so bad that I honestly, even as a parent, hated to send my kids to college and didn't push them to go to college. Now, my daughter got a couple of years of free college, and I encouraged her to take only scholastic courses, reading, writing, and arithmetic. So she got an associate's degree, which is called it's called a prep school degree, or an academic degree, because the only thing she did in the first 2 years of college was all the requirements to, the basic requirements, the core curriculum, they call it, a core curriculum degree. And so she wasn't being too influenced by the system, right? However, even though I raised my kids kind of liberal, and I will admit that my daughter is a blue-haired liberal who is employed at Portland University, but it's because she's an animal lover and she takes care of the lab animals there, and it gets her in, hands-on with the animals. But she is kind of liberal and open-minded, but at the same time, I raised her in a kind of under my protection, and she's a little bit sheltered. And so in the hallways, they put up a display while she was attending school there. And I'll go ahead and say it. It was, what university was it? It's the one in Eugene, Oregon. I think it's the Ducks. But they had photography art displayed in the hallways where every student could see. And they were graphic black and white images of men having sex together. So they were scenes of of gay interaction in a really graphic way, and I do mean graphic as in X-rated. And the educators there put that up as art. They were defending it as art when they know, in fact, what it really was is a desensitization program. They were desensitizing kids to these images, right, to try to break down their Christian morals or their feelings about that kind. It really wasn't art. It was disguised as art. And some parents raised a stink, and a few parents called, and I had because my daughter was personally offended by it. It wasn't even a matter of me wanting to get involved. She came to me and went, "Hey, Dad, what can I do to tell them that this makes me uncomfortable, that I'm a virgin?" Yes, my daughter was a college virgin. "I'm a virgin. I haven't even seen a boy like that yet, and they're literally shoving this in my face every day." And so I helped her write an email, and that email, along with some pushback from parents, eventually caused them to take the art display down. But nonetheless, you can see that there is an agenda. There is a social agenda. There is an intentional plan to desensitize people to certain things, to shake people loose from their faith and their belief in God, to replace religion with science. Which if you ask me, the way they practice science, the way they kowtow to science, the way they worship science, you would think that it was religion. Honestly, it kind of is a religion because it does require a certain amount of faith, right? You cannot prove evolution. It requires faith because evolution is not provable because of a little thing called the missing link, which I could talk about in a coffee talk, what the missing link actually is. But nonetheless, it's a religion that requires faith. And the followers of this science cult, the followers of this higher learning, I guess the best thing to call it is, they're brainwashed cult members, and they're fanatics, and they defend their faith in the institution of higher learning, just like a zealot would defend his religion, uh, mindlessly, without any logic, just because I said so, just because how dare you. That this is the new attitude. That within the education system is the whole rest of the 100-year plan. The 100-year plan required them to get control of the education system and then start re-educating people so that they could accept all of the other tenets of the 100-year plan, that they would have the seeds planted to bear fruit of destruction and work in combination with these other institutions like the corruption in the church, the corruption in the police force, right? We've talked about how they co-opted marriage and family and replaced it with the single parent and the blended family. And eventually their goal is that It Takes a Village becomes government schools where they just take your kids at birth and raise them for you, and you get to come visit them on the weekends, right? Ultimately they want complete and total control of your kids. I said it before, like the quote from Back to the Future 2. It's not about you, Marty. It's about your kids. We got to do something about your kids. They got your kids. And they got them because you took them down there, dressed them up in their nice little clothes, gave them a lunch, and sent them off to the government re-education program. But it's really not even the government. It's the Illuminati. It's the elitist within the government who took control of not just your local school, but your university education system. So Christian kids could go in one end, and atheist humanists would come out the other. I can't tell you how many parents I've talked to that actually regretted paying money to send their kids to a college that turned their kids into somebody they didn't like. They literally paid someone to turn their own kid into a human being that their own parent doesn't even like. That you send off a good kid that loves his family, that does the right thing, that opens doors for people, helps little old ladies cross the street, who's honest as the day is long, and you get back a screaming blue-haired leftist who thinks it's a good idea to assault police and set government buildings on fire. Even my own daughter got indoctrinated in the 2-year college. She was there long enough to pick up the wrong flyer, and because she loves animals, I found her watching a video one day. I walked up on her watching a video on her computer of a group of left-wing militants assaulting a hog slaughtering plant and breaking in at night, cutting locks, and freeing all the pigs. They just went in and just Free Willy, run, little Bob, be free. Run, little piggies. And they were radical. They were talking about that they were willing to use deadly force if confronted by security or police. And I kind of watched this video over her shoulder, and when that video cleared, there was another man, a local man, a man my daughter knew, standing there saying, okay, so this is who we're joining up with. We have this coming up next week. We're going to go out to this meat processing plant. We're going to go in at night and do all these. And he was describing a criminal night raid on a meat processing plant to as a protest against meat, because like I said, my daughter was a vegan. So she was I pulled fished right in, pulled right into this, and I straight up told her, "Girl, you better separate yourself from these people. You better have nothing to do with these people, or I will turn you and them into the police. I'm not above turning my own kid into the police if you're going to turn into a criminal that invades private property and tries to disrupt the food supply." And so I had to put my foot down to my own daughter. And it was then when she took a turn towards, well, if I can't stop animal testing, I'll get the job in the lab taking care of the lab animals, so at least I can make sure they're doing it by the rules and not abusing them. And that's what she does for a living now. And so, she's paid to take care of the animals, and she knows then they'll be taken care of right. That's a far cry from the activist they tried to turn her into. You know, if your professors in your colleges had their way, most of them would turn your kids into anti-government communist aggressors who were set out to destroy our way of life, from the way we eat to the way we think to the way we worship to the way we handle our own health, right? That they would take away our freedoms to make the world look like the pattern they put in their minds. Well, that pattern, that new society, that new world order was not implanted there by accident. They didn't stumble across it. This isn't some new epiphany. You're being deceived. They've infiltrated the education system. So, if you have the opportunity to be an activist in education, push towards more homeschool rights, more private Christian you know, higher learning institutions that aren't ruled by or ordered by or having to reconcile with state curriculum. To give educators the freedom to teach what they want and not to teach what they're being told they must teach. And once upon a time, not just in America, but worldwide, education was kind of a wide open thing. I mean, depending on what college you went to, you could get one kind of education that might be almost opposed diametrically to the other point of view. That you could have very extremes in education experiences because there was educational freedom. But as this becomes more and more institutionalized, you get less and less freedom, less opportunity for parents to have a say, less opportunity and choice. And so the answer to stopping this plan is to make freedom of choice and freedom and autonomy for private educational organizations and institutions to exist, who are able to teach what they want to teach, what they feel is the right thing to teach, and not be ruled by and controlled by government agencies or higher scholastic boards, people who control curriculum. Once again, if you can control the books and the way people are taught, you can control society. So I want you guys, that's what this whole series is about, is I want you to see the demonic behind it and how that they can use social media, technology, spying of all sorts to see who's been educated properly and who needs to go back in for re-education. That this is the next step, is mandatory groupthink. You will think the way we told you to think. No more Mr. Nice Guy. No more will we take your money for the opportunity to teach your kids to be radicals. Now you will all be radicals. You will all do as we say, or you will face the consequences. And that's the opposite of what we would like. We would like to see more freedom in education, more, it's what I'm looking for, more diversity, more control, more local control, more control by parents, school choice. All of that's very, very important. Don't get hung up on the evil fruit of the plan. Go after the plan itself. Many of you are wasting your time dealing with drag time story hour. You're wasting your time dealing with trying to get Tom Sawyer back in the library. What you need to be focused on is the higher learning, the people at the top, and you need to expose what they're doing. expose that the real problem is the indoctrination of teachers at the university level. So I hope you enjoyed this discussion today about the corruption. I won't even get into the sexual corruption that you have. I mean, well, maybe I will for a second. I got a couple minutes left. I mean, there was a teacher that had an affair with her kid. It was the one, not her kid, but one of her students rather, and like a 12-year-old student and a grown woman, and she had an affair with this kid. It was a big news story back in the 80s or 90s. They're adults now, and they actually ended up getting married once he turned 18. But for a while, she was locked up. They locked her up. But that was such a shock back then that a teacher would have such poor ethics as to get involved sexually with a preteen child, right, and claim to be in love with him, and for them to run away together. And that was such a crazy thing. And now it's just commonplace. Teachers are constantly getting busted for the exact same thing. There was a teacher who convinced an older high school student of hers. She got him into an affair and corrupted his mind and convinced him to kill her husband. And he did. And there was once upon a time when the school marm was the purest of purest, when a woman who taught children, a teacher, was held up on a pedestal because they were of pure heart and true intentions. They desired to make the world a better place by raising up good kids and educating them in the right ways. And those great men and women of the past, those great teachers of the past, have been replaced with blue-haired radicals, genuine communist agitators, people who want to tear down the system, people who, in a recent Project Veritas sting, they uncovered the fact that people who are in charge of hiring won't hire you as a teacher if you're a Christian. They'll find something wrong with you and throw your resume in the dust. They'll ask certain questions to try to figure out your moral stance. And if you lean right-wing conservative or Christian, you're out of here, buddy. They expose that as well, that they laugh about it. These people would rather cut off their left arm than hire a Christian or a person of old school morals. That they want people who are on the cutting edge of the radical left. So I'm running out of time here. I hope you enjoyed this series, and I hope you're seeing now this demonic plot to destroy our country. And I would encourage you to support the channel. I keep this shovel over here to show that if I don't preach, I have to dig ditches. So keep me in the saddle here, preaching and teaching for you and exposing the truth instead of out there digging ditches, because I'm way too old for that. You can contribute through the link in the description to PayPal. You can send a gift card to my P.O. box, which I really love, or a cash gift. Just a letter if you want. And you'd like to, I love handwritten letters. You can send me an email. And I guess I'll leave you. Oh, don't forget about Patreon. You can do that too. I'll leave you with this powerful prayer. May the Lord open your eyes to the deception in this world. May the Lord illuminate and make seen the dark things. May the evil plot be seen and be... It's the word I'm looking for, Lord. Help me out here. May this evil plot be exposed in Jesus' name. May you all see it as plain as the nose on your face. May the Lord surround you in his ring of fire and hedge of thorns of protection. May he send mighty angels of sufficient rank, authority, and number to surround you and drive the enemy from your midst. And then may you be enveloped by his peace. In Jesus' name, amen. We'll see you next time on the Sheep Pen.